The morning in Beijing begins with the familiar choreography of diplomatic protocol, carefully measured steps, the quiet shuffle of reporters positioning themselves, and the rising hum of anticipation that grows whenever China signals a major diplomatic communication today. That hum is unmistakably louder. China has confirmed that it lodged what it describes as a strong protest with Japan, stirred by remarks made by Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. And at the very centre of this rapidly developing exchange is a meeting between two senior officials, Jinsong of China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Masaaki Kanai, Japan's top Asia-Pacific diplomat. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear this was no ordinary bilateral consultation. What should have been a routine engagement between two neighbouring powers has instead been transformed into a platform for Beijing to express deep dissatisfaction Japan's comments on Taiwan, specifically those attributed to Prime Minister Takaichi, have been interpreted in China as crossing a diplomatic red line. And in the eyes of Beijing, that line is drawn not merely by national sentiment, but by what it repeatedly describes as foundational principles of international law and post-war global order. Against this backdrop, we hear the central message from Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning. Her words underscore just how seriously Beijing views this moment. She recounts that Jinsong held consultations in Beijing with Masaaki Kanai, and that during those talks, China once again lodged a strong protest with Japan. It is not the first protest China has issued this year, but the choice of phrasing, once again, highlights a growing pattern of friction between the two countries. China's concerns, as Mao Ning emphasizes, are rooted in what Beijing describes as erroneous remarks by Prime Minister Takaichi. Her comments on Taiwan, though not detailed publicly, were enough for China to characterize them as violating international law and the basic norms governing international relations. For Beijing, the question of Taiwan is not a casual subject of debate. It is a cornerstone of national policy and one that carries symbolic significance domestically. In diplomatic language, the stronger the adjectives, the more deliberate the messaging. And here, Beijing's choice is striking. Mao Ning continues to explain that Takaichi's statements severely undermine the post-war international order and seriously contravene the One China principle and the spirit of the four political documents between China and Japan. These documents, meticulously negotiated over decades, form the backbone of normalized relations between the two countries. For China to say that this foundation has been fundamentally damaged is, diplomatically speaking, a significant escalation. It signals not only displeasure, but an accusation that Tokyo is drifting away from commitments that have anchored East Asian stability since the 1970s. The narrative does not end with legal or diplomatic language. What stands out in Mao Ning's message is the emphasis on public sentiment inside China. She states that Prime Minister Takaichi's remarks have aroused public indignation and condemnation from the Chinese people. Whenever Beijing references public sentiment in an official statement, it is often meant to signal both the domestic costs of foreign actions and the potential consequences for bilateral ties. It transforms the matter from a government-to-government disagreement into something that resonates at the level of national identity. So how did this diplomatic moment take shape, and why has it escalated so rapidly? To understand that, we must look at the broader context. Relations between China and Japan have historically oscillated between economic cooperation and political tension. While the two nations share deep commercial interdependence, they remain burdened by disputes over history, territory, and regional security. The Taiwan issue and Japan's role in discussing it is a particularly sensitive point. Tokyo views the stability of the Taiwan Strait as essential to its own security. China, by contrast, sees any foreign commentary on Taiwan as interference in its internal affairs. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi has long been known for her outspoken views on regional security, often advocating for stronger Japanese defense policies and a more assertive posture toward China. Her remarks, therefore, were not entirely unexpected, but their timing has amplified their impact. With tensions already elevated across several regional flashpoints, from maritime disputes in the East China Sea to broader geopolitical competition, any statement touching on Taiwan carries added weight. Today's message from Beijing illustrates how deeply those comments cut into existing sensitivities. It paints a picture of a China that feels compelled to repeatedly remind Japan of agreed diplomatic frameworks and of a Japan that believes its national security concerns justify periodic commentary on developments across the Taiwan Strait. When these two positions collide, it creates the kind of diplomatic friction playing out now. Behind the scenes, the meeting between Jinsong and Masaaki Kanai likely involved lengthy discussions beyond what was communicated publicly. Historically, consultations at this level often include layers of nuance, with both sides presenting not only grievances but also proposals for managing future interactions. Still, the outward message today focuses squarely on China's protest. From a journalistic perspective, what makes this moment especially consequential is not simply the exchange of diplomatic language, but the broader regional implications. East Asia remains one of the most strategically sensitive areas in the world, and events here quickly influence global markets, security alliances, and international diplomacy. Anytime China and Japan, Asia's two largest economies, experience friction, the ripple effects are felt far beyond Beijing and Tokyo. This is why statements like those delivered by Mao Ning matter. They are not mere formalities. They are signals to allies, to rivals, and to domestic audiences. By articulating that Japan's remarks undermine the political foundation of China-Japan relations, Beijing is placing responsibility squarely on Tokyo to repair the damage. And by highlighting public indignation, it suggests there is little political room for China to soften its stance without concrete action from Japan. But Japan, for its part, is unlikely to back away from its long-standing position that Taiwan's security is linked to Japan's own strategic environment. Analysts in Tokyo often argue that Japan cannot remain silent on developments that might affect stability in the region, particularly as military tensions rise in nearby waters. In recent years, Japanese leaders have adopted more direct language about Taiwan, viewing it as a critical buffer zone that ensures peace in the wider Indo-Pacific. That perspective is not universally accepted within Japan, but it has gained traction as regional security challenges intensify. This divergence in perception is becoming increasingly visible. China sees Japan's commentary as a violation of diplomatic commitments. Japan sees it as necessary strategic communication. And as these two interpretations drift further apart, moments like today become focal points for larger geopolitical rivalry. If we zoom out even further, we find another layer to this story. The involvement of senior diplomats, Jinsong and Masaaki Kanai, suggests that both countries want to manage tensions through established channels. Their meeting is a reminder that even during tense moments, diplomatic infrastructure remains active and dialogue continues. But the tone of China's message indicates this is not a simple misunderstanding, it is a warning. For viewers trying to make sense of these developments, it is important to recognize that diplomatic protests, while common, vary significantly in severity. When China uses language like seriously violate, severely undermine, and extremely egregious, it signals a higher level of displeasure. These are phrases reserved for moments when Beijing feels political foundations are being challenged. The reference to post-war international order further elevates the stakes, framing the issue not merely as bilateral disagreement, but as a question of global norms. From a journalist's standpoint, the unfolding narrative is as much about diplomatic signalling as it is about regional politics. Every word, every phrase delivered in this context serves a purpose. To international listeners, Mao Ning's comments offer insight into how China intends to shape the narrative. It is asserting that Japan, not China, has disrupted the stability of bilateral relations. And by publicly voicing this position, Beijing is setting expectations for how future diplomatic engagements should proceed. Meanwhile, the Japanese side has yet to release its own detailed account of the meeting. Historically, Japan tends to respond with more restrained language, acknowledging concerns but avoiding large public confrontations. Whether that approach continues remains to be seen, especially under leadership figures who favour a bolder foreign policy direction. As tensions continue to develop, the world watches closely. For China, reaffirming the One China principle is non-negotiable. For Japan, addressing security concerns in the Indo-Pacific is increasingly seen as essential. And as long as these two positions remain fundamentally at odds, diplomatic flashpoints like today's protest may become more frequent. In the days ahead, analysts will parse every statement from both capitals, looking for clues about whether this moment becomes an isolated dispute or the beginning of a broader diplomatic strain. For now, what remains clear is that the meeting in Beijing was more than a formality. It was a warning shot, a reminder of unresolved tensions, and a demonstration of how delicate regional diplomacy can be. As this story continues to evolve, the world's attention will stay fixed on East Asia, where messages delivered in quiet meeting rooms can have consequences far beyond their walls, and today, those messages were unmistakably sharp.